What happens when the boss becomes the employee? Maya Brooks, the CEO of Brooks Realty, goes undercover in her own company, only to uncover a toxic culture hiding in plain sight. Will she be able to fix what's broken, or is it too late to save the company she built? Let's find out. Maya Brooks adjusted the oversized glasses on her nose, glancing at a reflection in the office bathroom mirror. The woman staring back at her wasn't the polished CEO of Brooks Realty. Gone were the sleek designer suits, the signature diamond-studded watch, and the commanding presence that turned heads in boardrooms. Instead, she wore a wrinkled blouse, khaki slacks a size too big, and a nervous demeanor that she'd carefully crafted. She looked ordinary, perfect. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out of the bathroom and into the bustling headquarters of the company she built from the ground up. The open floor plan was filled with employees hunched over desks, phones ringing, keyboards clacking. It was the heart of her empire, a place she hadn't truly walked through in years. Sure, she had weekly reports and department meetings, but that was different. That was the view from the top. Today, she wasn't Maya Brooks, the CEO. She was Monica Brown, a temporary hire assigned to assist the real estate team with data entry. No one had recognized her when she walked in earlier that morning. Not even Samantha, her own assistant, who had greeted her with a curt nod and barely looked up from her computer. Maya had to bite down a smirk. The wig, the fake glasses, and the change in posture had done their job. No one saw power in her now. Good. Her first stop was the training session for new hires, led by a man she had only ever spoken to once. Logan Pierce, the regional manager. He was responsible for onboarding employees, ensuring they were set up for success. On paper, he was one of the company's highest performers. His numbers were strong, and his reports were glowing. But Maya had received anonymous complaints, allegations of favoritism, discrimination, and toxic behavior. She needed to see it for herself. The conference room was half full when she arrived. A few other hires, fresh faces who looked eager, nervous, or just plain exhausted, sat in cheap plastic chairs flipping through a stack of documents. Then Logan walked in. He wasn't what Maya expected. A broad-shouldered man in his early 40s, he had a permanent scowl that made his face seem carved from stone. His gaze swept the room with the air of someone who had long since stopped pretending to care. "All right, listen up," he barked, dropping a stack of binders on the desk. "I don't have time to babysit, so let's make this quick. If you're here to make money, great. If you're here to make friends, leave now. This isn't some hand-holding feel-good kind of job. You sell, or you're out. Simple." Maya leaned back in her chair, carefully watching the reactions around her. Some of the new hires stiffened. Others avoided his gaze. One woman, a young black woman seated in the front, frowned slightly, shifting uncomfortably. Logan's eyes landed on her, and he pointed. "Name," he demanded. She hesitated. "Aaliyah Carter." Logan smirked. "Aaliyah? Cute name. Where are you from?" She blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said, where are you from originally?" His tone was casual, but Maya recognized the undercurrent behind it. Aaliyah's back straightened. "I'm from Chicago." "No, I mean like you're—" Logan continued smirking. "I'm just curious, background check and all." Maya felt her hands tighten into fists beneath the table. Aaliyah's jaw clenched, but she forced a polite smile. "I don't think that's relevant to the job, sir." Logan chuckled. "Relax. I'm just making conversation. No need to be so sensitive." He turned away before she could respond, moving on as if nothing happened. Maya's stomach churned. The microaggressions were subtle, but they were there, woven into the fabric of the company, existing in plain sight yet invisible to those who didn't know where to look. Logan carried himself like a man who had never faced consequences. He knew that no matter what he said or did, the rules weren't meant for him. Maya had seen enough after the training session. She moved to her assigned desk, pretending to struggle with the login system. A low murmur of voices filled the air around her as employees gossiped, unaware that their boss sat just a few feet away. "He's got no chance," a woman whispered from the next cubicle. "She who?" another voice asked. "The new girl, the black one." Maya stilled, already on Logan's bad side. The woman continued, "You know how he is. If you don't laugh at his jokes or act like he's the smartest guy in the room, you're done. That's how it works here." "Yeah, but isn't HR supposed to—" The woman scoffed. "Please. HR works for Logan." Maya's blood ran cold. The rumors were true, and she had just confirmed something even worse. It wasn't just Logan. It was a system, a culture that allowed people like him to thrive. Maya turned back to her screen, her heart pounding. Tomorrow she would return. She would watch, she would listen, but the day after, things were going to change. Maya returned the next day, blending into the background just as she had before. She walked through the same doors in her same ill-fitted clothes and sat at the same desk where no one paid her any attention. But this time, she had a plan. She started by observing how Logan interacted with the other employees. It didn't take long to see that his attitude toward Aaliyah wasn't an isolated incident. He talked over the women in meetings, dismissed ideas from employees of color, and treated the younger hires like they were disposable. The worst part was that no one challenged him. "Did you send those reports to my inbox?" Logan barked at Aaliyah later that afternoon. "Yes," she answered, keeping her voice neutral. "You sure? 'Cause I don't see them," he said, crossing his arms. Aaliyah opened her laptop, clicking through her email. "I sent them at 9:45 this morning. Do you want me to forward them again?" Logan scoffed. "Unbelievable. You people always got an excuse." Maya clenched her jaw so hard her teeth hurt. A few employees glanced up from their desks but quickly looked away. No one was going to defend Aaliyah. They were too scared, too conditioned to accept this as normal. But Maya wasn't. She had spent years building this company, it was a place where hardworking people could find success, and now she was watching it rot from the inside. During lunch, she sat alone in the break room, pretending to eat while listening to the conversations happening around her. "They let Logan get away with everything," a young man whispered. "Because he's got connections," another replied. "You complain about him, and suddenly your numbers don't meet expectations. HR doesn't do anything." "HR?" The man chuckled. "HR is Logan's drinking buddy." Maya had heard enough. That evening, she sat in her office, her real office, going through reports. Logan had managed to keep his department profitable, but a deeper dive showed a different story. His turnover rate was the highest in the company, and complaints about him mysteriously disappeared before reaching HR. She pulled up a few exit interviews from past employees. The responses were vague, almost scripted. None of them directly called out Logan, but the pattern was clear. Employees left because of workplace culture, because of a hostile environment, because they didn't feel valued. It was all there, hidden in plain sight. Maya leaned back in her chair, staring at the city lights through her window. This wasn't just a bad ad manager problem. This was a company-wide failure, and tomorrow she was going to fix it. The morning started like any other, except Maya no longer had to pretend. She walked through the office doors, not as Monica Brown, but as Maya Brooks. The shift in energy was immediate. Employees who had ignored her before suddenly smiled and greeted her. Conversations hushed as she passed. The air was thick with nervous anticipation. Logan was the last to notice. He strolled into the office with his usual arrogance, tossing his bag onto his desk. Then he saw her. His face went pale. "Spooks," he stammered. Maya crossed her arms. "Logan, my office now." The silence in the office was deafening. Employees exchanged glances, barely able to contain their curiosity. Logan followed her into the office, his confident facade slipping with every step. She shut the door behind them and folded her arms. "Tell me, Logan," she began, her voice calm but sharp. "What do you think would happen if I found out my employees were being mistreated?" He shifted uncomfortably. I'm not sure what you mean, ma'am." Maya leaned forward. "I think you do." Logan swallowed hard. "Look, if someone's been complaining about me, I can assure you it's just a misunderstanding. You know how sensitive people are these days." She tilted her head. "Sensitive is just—" He sighed, forcing a laugh. "People exaggerate things, Miss Brooks. I run a tight team. Sometimes that means pushing people harder than they're used to. That's not a crime, is it?" Maya nodded slowly. "No, it's not." Relief flickered across his face. "But discrimination is," she added. "Hostile work environments allow employees to feel unsafe in their own workplace. That's a problem, Logan. And do you know what I do with problems?" He didn't answer. "I remove them," she said simply. His mouth opened then closed. "You can't." "I can," she interrupted. "And I will." Logan's bravado cracked. "Let's not do anything drastic. I've been here for years." "And that's exactly why this is happening now," she cut in. "Because for years, you've gotten away with it." She grabbed a folder from her desk and tossed it in front of him. "These are the complaints against you, the ones that never made it to HR. The exit interviews from employees who left because of you. The proof that you are not only a liability but a danger to this company." He stared at the folder, his hand shaking slightly. "I didn't know," he stammered. "You did. Maya snapped. You just didn't care. A long silence stretched between them. Please, Logan muttered. I can fix this. Maya exhaled sharply. You had your chance. She reached for the intercom and pressed a button. Security. Please escort Mr. Pierce out of the building, effective immediately. Logan's shoulders slumped as the reality sank in. 2 guards entered, waiting by the door. Don't do this, he tried again, desperation in his voice. I need this job. Maya's eyes hardened. So did the people you drove out. Security stepped forward, and Logan turned to plead one last time. But Maya had already opened the door. Looking past him, the office was silent. Every employee was watching. Logan clenched his jaw, straightened his shoulders, and walked out. Maya stepped into the center of the floor. All department heads, she called out. Conference room now. A ripple of movement spread through the office as employees murmured to one another, some still in shock. Maya waited until the room filled before she spoke. There are going to be changes, she announced. Starting today, this company will be run the way it was meant to be. A place where people are valued, respected, and given opportunities based on their work, not their ability to tolerate abuse. She met each gaze, making sure they understood. If you are here to contribute to that vision, I welcome you. But if you are part of the problem, you won't be here much longer. A few nervous glances and some nods followed. Maya took a deep breath. For too long, people like Logan have dictated how things are run. That ends now. The silence was thick. Then slowly a single clap emerged. Then another, and another. The room erupted into applause. Maya let the sound wash over her. This wasn't just about Logan. It was about every single person in that room. And now, finally, they knew things were going to be different. Maya stood in the center of the conference room, her gaze sweeping across the faces of her leadership team. Some were nervous, others skeptical, and a few looked outright defiant. It didn't matter. They had all seen Logan escorted out, and they knew this wasn't just a speech. This was a reckoning. I won't waste time sugarcoating this, she began. For too long, certain people in this company have operated under the assumption that they're untouchable. That ends today. A murmur ran through the room, but no one dared to speak. I spent the last 2 days working among you unnoticed, and what I saw disgusted me, she continued, her voice measured but firm. Discrimination, corruption, fear. This company was built on the idea that talent and work ethic determine success. But in reality, we've allowed a culture where bullies thrive, where voices are silenced, and where power is abused. Maya took a slow breath. I didn't start this company for it to become a playground for people like Logan Pierce. She let that settle before she continued. I want each of you to think about your role in this. Some of you actively contributed to this culture. Some of you stood by and let it happen. Others looked the other way because it was easier than fighting against it. But make no mistake. Whether you participated or tolerated it, you are part of the problem. A few glances were exchanged around the room. The weight of her words was hitting them now. This is your chance to change that, she continued. HR will be conducting an internal audit immediately. Every complaint that was previously ignored will be reviewed. If your name is tied to misconduct, you will answer for it. If you have used your position to intimidate, manipulate, or silence others, you will be held accountable. The tension in the room was suffocating. Some of them were already realizing they might not have a future here. Maya looked directly at Samantha, her assistant, who had barely spoken a word since she walked in. Samantha had been complicit, but Maya knew she had also been under Logan's influence for years. There was a difference between fear and malice. She would give some people a chance to redeem themselves. I believe in second chances, Maya continued. I also believe in consequences. If you want to be part of this company moving forward, you'll need to prove it. That means every policy will be enforced. That means fairness, transparency, and accountability at every level. If that's a problem for you, you should leave. Now she waited. No one moved. Maya nodded. Good. She turned toward one of the department heads. Effective immediately. HR will be restructured. A third-party firm will oversee all complaints until we have a system that employees can trust. Any manager found suppressing reports will be fired on the spot. The woman nodded quickly, writing it down. She turned to another. Every employee will undergo leadership training focused on equity and inclusion. Those who refuse will no longer work here. Another nod. Then her gaze found Aliyah standing near the back of the room. And I want to hear from the employees who were ignored. Aliyah, you'll help lead a new internal committee designed to protect employees and ensure their voices are heard. Aliyah's eyes widened. Me? Maya said firmly. You had the courage to stand up to Logan. You spoke up when no one else did. We need people like you. Ellen hesitated, then nodded. I won't let you down, Aaliyah said. I know, Maya said simply. She turned back to the room. If this sounds too difficult, you're free to leave. But understand this. What happened to Logan wasn't an exception. It was a warning. No one moved. Maya let out a slow breath. Then let's get to work. The meeting ended, and the room emptied out slowly. Some left with determined expressions. Others looked shaken. Maya remained standing as employees walked past her, absorbing the weight of what she had just set in motion. She had known this wouldn't be easy. Change never was. But it was necessary. Aaliyah lingered near the door. Miss Brooks? Maya turned. Yes? I just wanted to say thank you, Aaliyah said, her voice soft but strong. I've worked at places like this before, and usually people like Logan win. Not here, Maya assured her. Aaliyah nodded, her shoulders a little straighter as she left. Maya exhaled, closing her eyes for a brief moment. Tomorrow would bring new battles. Some employees would push back, and some clients might question her leadership. But she didn't care. She had built this company from nothing. Once she could rebuild it again, and this time, she would build it right. The office had a different energy now. A shift that was almost imperceptible, yet unmistakable. Maya could feel it the moment she walked in the next morning. Employees whispered in hushed voices, their eyes darting toward her before quickly looking away. The silence wasn't the usual tense, overworked exhaustion that had settled in before. This was different. This was anticipation. Some people were waiting for things to go back to the way they were, for Maya's sudden intervention to fade away. Others were waiting to see if the promises of change were real. She could feel both expectations pressing down on her as she moved through the space, making her way to her office. But she didn't sit down. She kept walking, past the executive wing, past the glass doors leading to the upper management offices, and toward the main floor, where the heart of the company worked. The room grew quieter as she entered. Good morning, she said, her voice even. Murmured greetings followed, uncertain and cautious. No one knew what to expect from her anymore. That was good. She stopped at the center of the floor and let her gaze sweep across the room. I imagine a lot of you are wondering if what happened yesterday was temporary, if things will quietly return to normal. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. I want to make something very clear. She clasped her hands in front of her, her voice steady. What happened yesterday was not an event. It was the beginning of a permanent change. If that makes you nervous, it should. If that excites you, even better. Because this company is no longer a place where bad behavior is tolerated simply because someone has a title. More murmurs now, but she pressed forward. I'm not naive, she continued. I know that some of you believe Logan was just doing what needed to be done. That this company needs people like him to stay profitable. I've read the numbers, I've seen the revenue, and I'm telling you now, he wasn't making this company stronger. He was poisoning it from the inside. She took a step forward. People are our greatest asset. Not just the ones in suits making the deals, but the ones who answer phones, who handle clients, who keep this company moving day after day. If you don't believe that, then this is not the place for you. Silence enveloped the room, but then a voice from the back broke through. What about the clients? Maya turned to see a man in a button-down and tie, arms crossed. She recognized him as one of Logan's close associates, someone who had benefited from the system that had just been dismantled. He didn't look hostile, but he did look doubtful. Some of them liked the way Logan did business. He continued. They expected the aggressiveness, the take-no-prisoners approach. Are we just supposed to let those clients walk? Maya considered him for a moment before responding. Yes. A ripple of surprise moved through the office. The man frowned. You're saying you'd rather lose money than keep those clients happy? I'm saying we don't need to be a company that sacrifices integrity for profit, Maya said firmly. If a client only works with us because we're willing to be unethical, then we don't need that client. Another murmur arose, but this time it felt different. Maya wasn't just talking about Logan anymore. She was addressing all of them. The people who had spent years looking the other way. The ones who had played along to keep their jobs, and those who had stayed silent because they believed it was the only way to survive. But survival wasn't enough anymore. Not in this company. She turned back to the rest of the employees. I know change is uncomfortable. I know some of you are wondering what this means for your own futures here. So let me be clear. If you're willing to work in a company that values people, respects talent, and rewards integrity, you have nothing to worry about. If you've benefited from the old system and think you can continue doing things the same way, You're in for a rude awakening. She paused, then added, This is your chance to decide where you stand. A silence hung in the air. People weren't just hearing her words. They were absorbing them. She could see it in the way some sat up a little straighter, in the way others exchanged glances, and in the subtle nods from those who had been on the receiving end of Logan's toxicity. Then slowly, one by one, people started to clap. It wasn't loud at first, just a few scattered claps, hesitant and uncertain, but then more joined in. Alo was one of the first to stand, clapping firmly. A few others followed, then more until the entire floor was applauding. Maya didn't smile, but she felt something in her chest loosen just a little. This was only the beginning. As the applause settled, she nodded once. Let's get to work. The energy in the office shifted. It wasn't just nerves anymore. It was purpose. Employees turned back to their screens, some moving with more urgency, others speaking quietly as if processing what had just happened. Maya returned to her office, but before she could sit, her assistant Samantha appeared in the doorway. She looked different, not as guarded. Samantha's voice held a weight that felt more like a statement than a question. You really meant all of that, she said, meeting Maya's gaze. I don't say things I don't mean, Maya replied firmly. Samantha hesitated for a moment, then nodded. I'd like to help with the transition, however I can. Maya studied her for a moment, considering the sincerity in her tone. Then let's start now, she said, and Samantha stepped inside. Though she didn't smile, the tension in her shoulders eased slightly. Maya exhaled, finally sitting at her desk for the first time that morning. The weight of the day's decisions pressed on her, but so did the promise of a brighter future. Reports to review, policies to enforce, and wounds to mend. There was still so much to do. Resistance was inevitable. Some would cling to the past, but Maya was ready. The future of Brooks Realty had already shifted, and she was determined to make sure it never went back. Change had begun, and this time it was here to stay, was here to